Fantastic. And we're live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for meeting us here on the live chat from Making Change Happen. I am super thrilled today. I've got an excellent guest. Her name is Davina Stanley, and she is a communications guru. I've been following her knowledge and advice, and we're also friends offline, and I find her tips and her courses and her knowledge absolutely instrumental to how to make a communication ring true with the decision makers in your organization, in your team, or in your leadership. um, Today, we're talking about how we can make those status updates that all of us get. We live in a sea of status updates. How we can make them strategically important, and how we can get the right messages to the right people, to those who need to make a decision and to move us forward. And I'm really excited because this topic is probably a topic that applies to everyone, whether you're starting your career, whether you're a middle manager, whether you're an executive in a big organization or in a small organization. We all get updates, and we all need to know how to make them crisper and how to make them more strategic, more to the point, and driving us forward. And Davina, is here to help us really nail down these tips that can propel us forward in our communications effort. Now, before we dive into the topic, I'd love Davina to give us an introduction, how you came into being a communications expert, and give us a little bit of a sense of the twists and turns of your career that led you to being here.
Well, there are a few. Thank you, Christina. I always love chatting with you. Um, there are a few twists and turns because I think I'm probably, well, correct me anyone if they're listening and I'm wrong, but I think I might be the only kindergarten teacher hired by McKinsey. Maybe not, but I think so. So, I grew up on a farm in the country and, um,
Mm,
I grew up thinking anything was possible, but had no idea what that was. And so I
yeah.
did teaching because it was tangible and I loved young children and that was terrific. But I really did discover very quickly that teaching 25, 4-year-old boys probably wasn't for me.
Mm,
So I moved on quickly into a more corporate sort of environment and was encouraged to go back to school, which I did. And so I worked in corporate communication, and I was very, very fortunate when I was at Teachers College to be taught to write by one of Australia's best children's authors. And her name is Mem Fox. And she wrote some wonderful children's
mm.
books called Possum Magic was one. I see the reaction on your face.
Yes.
Wilfred Gordon, MacDonald Partridge, a whole lot of most magnificent children's books. So I
Oh,
learned a lot of, creative ways to write. And then by happenstance, landed in as actually a secretary at first in a corporate affairs department where communication and writing were a big
mm,
part of what we did. So I got bored very quickly with the job that I had, so I started helping other people
yeah.
with their job, and that's when they said, "Look, you really should go back to uni." So I did that at nights and so on. And then, married very young and moved to Hong Kong with my husband, who saw a job ad for McKinsey. And he thought, "Oh, I'd like that," and had a look at it and said, "Oh, well, actually, no, that's not for me. That's for you." And I looked at it and went, "Oh, that sounds interesting. What's a communication specialist? That's a great role. But what's McKinsey? What's management consulting?" I had no idea,
What
just
do
not
they
come across that.
do?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what's that? And it's like, oh, that
Yeah.
sounds fun. All right, I'm
Yeah.
going to go for that. And I got it. And so that was the really big turning point for me in my career because it just opened up a world of possibility that I didn't know existed
Mm,
around problem solving, about thinking, and just the
yeah.
opportunity to work with such clever people. The consultants are all such clever people. And,
Mm,
we had to pass the tests to get into. So, that's sort of all part of the game. But that just set me on a path. And then, my husband had a career that moved a lot. So I ended up starting my own business after about 3 years with the firm because we moved and it wasn't practical to be working, full time. and having 2 tiny children and having him traveling all the time. So I've ended up being quite entrepreneurial, which suits me, I think.
Yeah, that's
And just really enjoyed that. I freelanced for McKinsey for 15 years and built my own independent practice
mhm,
around that. And so now I focus on helping primarily mid to senior leaders, help them clarify and convey complex ideas so they get better, faster decisions. And
mhm,
I recently wrote 2 books on that subject, one for the leaders and one for the team members. And so, we're talking today about how to have, strategic influence, and I think it's a collaborative effort. I think
mhm.
that's something that we forget,
Yeah,
actually. We don't
yeah.
have to do this on our own. And if we're structured about it, we can actually really get much better, faster decisions too.
Mhm, mhm. Yes. Yeah, so the 2 books are called Elevate and Engage, and we'll talk about this a little bit later
Mm.
in the chat. But it'll be so good to unravel some of the advice that you've got there for leaders and for team members equally, because as you say, it can be a collaborative effort rather than
Mm.
an overwhelming last minute thing. Oh my goodness,
Oh,
I need to highlight the most
yes,
important things, and what are they? I love also the fact
exactly.
that we share this common background in management consulting, because as we both know, it's like a different world, right? It's
Mm. Yeah,
entering a completely different world, completely different language, completely different way of operating,
yes,
and you have to learn pretty quickly on uh,
don't you?
you're being dropped in the big sea, and you have to learn to swim. I
Oh my
remember,
goodness.
just a quick story. I remember when I first started in management consulting, and I was an experienced hire. I came from industry into consulting, and I was paired with this team, which was already operating. They were already on the client, and I swam in. I said, "Hello, guys. I am here to do," and I had to put my first presentation for the client. And I remember when I did it, I felt so proud of myself. And the team saw it and they said, "You've got a lot to learn. You've got a lot to
But imagine going into that situation as the communication specialist, right?
learn."
Because I remember there was a period at McKinsey where people like me were staffed to help. We tended to be at first on the outside of the
Yes,
projects. So
yeah.
you'd be sitting in the office more than at the client side. And people would book you for blocks of time to help with a presentation or something like that.
Mm,
And you really struggle to get some 5 minutes with them on the phone to say, hey, who are you
yes,
actually talking to with this, and what outcomes do you need, like, well, what's this for,
yes,
which
yeah.
talking about updates and so on is the most pivotal thing to think about.
Mm, yeah,
And so, but once you did, then it became much easier. But the
yeah.
first time I got staffed inside a team to a project, um, it was such a wonderful experience, but I'll never ever forget that first team meeting when I had a deliverable, because of course the expectations were up here for me. And I'd never worked in a team like this before. And it's very
Yes.
demanding, and I had to do a whole lot of stakeholder analysis and work out what their communication channels were and so on internally,
Yes,
and map
yes,
it. And so I did that. But what I gave them all the data. I gave them the map. Here's what I found. But I didn't say, here's what that means. And I will
mm,
never, ever forget being torn to shreds in front of that group by that. It was
mm.
an engagement manager. And, I'm not going to say his name. I remember him very well. And but it was just like, oh, then I showed my boss, my communications boss, and I said, as soon as he said it, I could see the problem, but nobody coached me or guided me. I just had to work it
Yeah,
out. And I think
yeah.
there was an assumption that I knew the difference, but I was just so buried in ticking all the boxes and finding all the information that I didn't stick my head up and think, oh, now what are we actually going to do with this? Yeah.
Yes, and
So
it's
not what
that.
had I done, but what do I need to deliver here? Right?
Yes, yes, and it's so important, what is the main message? What is the audience? What
Mm,
outcomes are we seeking to achieve? So it's that upfront
mm,
thinking that we
mm.
all like to dive in and start doing the right stuff and start
Correct.
picking out the templates.
Yes,
But
making
it's
it look nice, making sure the connectors on PowerPoint all line
yeah,
up and it's beautiful.
yes,
But I think, it's just such the biggest trap, isn't it? That we
it
dive
is.
in to
It
start
is.
preparing. And this is something, even when I teach my clients, I have to remind them and say, when you send me something, I want that strategy page that I've given you.
Mm,
Give me your strategy page. Don't start writing. Don't just give me a slew of slides. I want to see your thinking. I want to
yes.
know that you've actually thought about who this is really for and what outcome you want. And I
Mm,
think these routine updates are a really classic situation where it's just, oh gosh, I've got an update in 2 days' time. I've got to get it ready, rather than thinking, oh, actually, you know what? Everything's going really well. We're hitting all our
yeah,
metrics. It's awesome. You know, they don't need much from me. I just need to be able to either send them a note and say, look, all is well.
yeah.
This is not a watermelon. It's not green on the outside and red in the middle. It really is good. Here's why.
Mm,
And,
mm,
send them an email saying, I don't think we need to meet unless you've got questions for me. It's all good. Or say, look, I'm just going to take 5 minutes just to share with you that everything's great. Here's
yeah.
why. One, two, three, four. Done. See you. Bye. Any questions? Good. See you later. Like, don't drown them in stuff. I think,
Mm,
you can get such a lot of respect, can't you, for saying, look, I really don't think we need to meet. Can we save this for when I really need you? These
yeah.
meetings are expensive.
I think it's also people can get very capable at synthesizing information and elevating the right elements to the right audience. But it is part of, I suppose, learning it and applying it over and over, and then knowing
Hmm.
when to do it perfectly. And this is
Yes.
part of what you teach. This is part of the method
Yeah.
of, and I suppose one part of our background in consulting is exactly this, being able to elevate the message, being able to distill it down to its core. What are the
Mhm.
value elements, and then deliver that. Now, a lot of the mistakes I suppose I see in working with clients when we're working on big change programs is the messages are buried down in lots of different slides and reams of reports and information. And it's so tricky to even see, what are we trying to do? What is the outcome? What is
Correct.
the timeline? The core messaging. Um, I know you will talk to us about, what are some of the aspects of that. But some of the mistakes that you see and some of the quick corrections, can you highlight like the top couple that
Mm,
you see almost on daily basis, and quick corrections that people can apply and can go,
mm,
okay, now that makes sense.
mm. So I think the first one, we've alluded to this already, is to think first. Don't just write. Don't write what you
Mm,
think. Sometimes you sort of need to blurt a whole lot of things out and just dump them.
yeah,
But if you need to do that, like
yeah.
talk into a dictaphone or get a random Word document open and just throw at it.
Mm,
Don't open up the communication that you're going to deliver. Otherwise, you'll get
yes.
stuck, making it pretty and fixing the formatting, and you'll be,
Mm,
you forget that you're writing for yourself. So I
yes.
think step one, if you need to brainstorm, do, but don't do it in your end deliverable. Do it consciously in a separate thing, whatever that is,
Yes.
whatever that works for you. And look, sometimes just walking and muttering to yourself or buttering into
Yes.
your transcription device, maybe
Yeah.
just walking and taking your phone with you. And I sometimes use notes in my phone when I'm off somewhere and thinking about something, and just, oh, jot that down,
Mm,
just to sort of
yeah.
allow yourself to collect your thoughts. Because if you do start writing the document straight away, you'll waste a lot of time. It'll feel like you're being really busy, but you really won't achieve what you need. So
Mm,
I think be a little bit aware of how ready you are,
yeah.
and try not to write the document or the presentation as your way of thinking about it. People talk about writing to think, but I think it's very slow. So be conscious of that. You know, if you're going to write to think,
Yes.
you're writing to yourself, do it somewhere else, do it another way, do
Yeah.
that. But I
I'm
think,
also Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say, I'm interested in what you think when it comes to updates, because sometimes we've been asked to do an update very
Mhm,
quickly at the back of a
mhm,
meeting, or,
mm.
you meet someone in the corridor and they go, "Oh, so what's happening with this project? Can you just give me like the top
Yes,
three things that I need to know?" And you go, "Oh my
yes,
goodness, like how, what, how?"
yes,
Frazzled dazzled.
exactly.
So,
Yeah, and I
what are
think
your tips in those situations? Like, how do you
ab
compose yourself? How do you elevate your thinking? How do you go, okay, this is what I need to do. These are the steps.
yeah, yeah, beautiful. And people often ask me, "Oh, how do I do this?" Thinking on my feet,
Mm,
which is part of your
yes.
question there, I think. And I think there are two times when you have to think on your feet. One is, as you described, you've bumped into somebody in the corridor and they've asked you. Another one is when you're getting ready to go into a meeting to prepare to present,
Mm,
and you've prepared, you've got your slides, you've got everything, and you were going to have half an hour, and suddenly you've got 5 minutes. I think both
yes.
of those instances require you to think on your feet. And so, in the instance where you're caught on the hop in the hallway,
Mm,
I think that the only thing you can do is to be very consciously ready for those. It's reasonable to expect you will be asked, "How's it going?" every week on your
yeah.
project by bumping into some stakeholders somewhere, whether you're in the physical office or just working remotely. You're going to have that happen. So, I think just at the end of every week, think, okay, what have we delivered? How are we going? What are our challenges? And really
Mm,
distill that down so you've got a story. And I teach people to use patterns in structuring their message. I use a structured thinking technique, which means you have a super short introduction, one main message, and 2 to 5 supporting points every time. Doesn't matter
mhm.
what the communication is.
Yeah.
And so make sure you have particularly that main message. Everything's awesome this week. Here's why. All is
Yes.
well. That's what I call that pattern. Here's 3 reasons why. This aspect of the project is trucking really
Mm,
well. This one is actually ahead of schedule. And this one, it's okay. And we're holding our own, but we're going to be okay. We're going to
mm,
make it. So they're not all
yeah.
the same. You're not hiding anything. It's just, yep, all is well. So that's one.
Yeah.
Another one I have, which is called change tack, and that's when I think a more common one, right? Where you
Mm,
say, look, there's a number of things here that have gone really, really well.
yeah.
However, and the however can be all sorts of things. It could be, I really value your advice on something.
Mhm,
Particularly
mhm.
for these really expensive steerco meetings or whatever. It's like, okay, how can they help me accelerate the delivery of this? Okay,
Yes.
however, I'd really appreciate you helping me get extra visibility with two of your peers because we're at risk of running behind on those aspects of the project. I just got an inkling they're not quite delivering as fast as we need them to. They're not responding quickly enough to us. They're not giving us the data we need. There's some other blockage. So, however, we need your help, might be a thing. Or, however, we need to change direction a little to
Yeah.
accommodate some things that have happened. They could be great things. It could be that
Mm,
we've killed it. We're really ahead of our schedule. So we want to accelerate. Or it could be, you know, Mary's had COVID for the last 2 weeks. So
mm,
we've really got to adjust our priorities a bit so we can redistribute the work and catch up. Or it could
yes.
be any one of a number of things, something we thought that was going to work really well just hasn't, or, something. So things have gone really well. Some things have gone really well. However, we need your help, or we can go faster, slower.
Mhm,
We need to change. Therefore, here's what we recommend. And you're coming in then with a recommendation. That's what we call a deductive structure, where you're building a case before, giving your action plan. And that's a very, very useful one. And I think, I don't know what percentage of the time when people are doing updates, something like that's useful, but it sort of warms everybody up with the good news first,
yeah.
without being too political about it. It's just like, oh, good,
Mm,
this, yeah, great. Oh, phew, because you don't want to go in with, you, you know, oh dear, we've got a problem. You don't want to begin with that if you can help it. You have to
oh,
sometimes to shake them a
completely.
bit,
Yes,
but
completely.
you don't want to do that
Um,
if you don't have to.
I'm interested in going back 2 steps in what you said. You something's going really well,
Mhm,
however, there's an issue, and here's
mhm,
my recommendation. Would
mhm.
you come up with one recommendation, or would you come up with several recommendations? And would
It's
that
going to
depend
depend.
on the audience
Yeah.
that you're presenting it to?
And I think the trick though is, let's say, however, we need to change direction a little. And I'm not sure I can make something up on the spot to be
Yeah.
useful, but other than say we just need to change, we need to reprioritize, let's say that's it, to accommodate the fact that Mary's been out for 2 weeks. And
Mhm.
so your actions are going to be multiple, but they're all under the umbrella of reprioritizing,
Yes. Yeah.
right? And so the trick is to find the glue among the multiple things so you can describe that at the high level. And that sets the scene really well for the audience. So they don't have to, people say, I've got 3 things to tell you. Here's thing one. And
Yes.
you listen to thing one and you wait, and then you get to thing two, and you know that there's a third thing, but you're kind of bored now and you've lost it. You think, gosh, have I missed it? Right? Whereas
Yes.
if you
Where
go
is
at the
the
very,
third?
it's like, where is it? Yeah, it's like, so instead, if you say, look, um, although we've made great progress this last month, we do need to reprioritize to ensure we hit our target for the
Yeah.
quarter. Let's say that's your main message. Okay, you've got the general idea, and my
Mm.
interest is piqued because I'm thinking, you're reprioritizing. I want to know about that. Okay, tell me
Yeah.
more. And then
Yes.
you're saying, okay, we've made great progress. However, we need to reprioritize. Here is why, right?
Yeah.
So you've got that high level. And, the main message, we need to reprioritize. So now I'm going to tell you that in 3 parts. Firstly, I'm going to unpack the things that we've done really well.
Mm.
Then I'm going to talk to you about why I think we need to reprioritize and why that's really important at this particular point. And then I'm going to
Mm.
share with you how I think we should reprioritize.
Mm.
So let me
Yeah.
run you through and just frame it really nicely. But don't just go, I've got 3 things for you,
Yeah.
and not frame it. Because if you lose them in thing two, they don't make it to thing three.
Mm. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and it almost have to elevate the 3 key messages and then deep dive
Abs-
into them, because I think sometimes stakeholders get lost in the first message, or take a wrong turn, and
Mm,
it's hard to bring
absolutely.
them back to the main topic.
Isn't
So
it?
yeah.
Yes, yes.
I-
And another trap I think with these updates is that people put screeds and screeds of background at the front.
Mm,
Yeah.
yes.
And like they
Experience.
they sort of give you a history lesson on the project rather
Yeah.
than saying something really sharp like, you know, we're now at the third phase of this project to implement the new enterprise management system.
Mm,
Just to sort of set it up. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's what we're doing. That's why we're here.
yeah,
Great.
that's how we
Okay.
do it.
Why are you telling me that? I want to update you on our progress. Okay. How are you going?
Yes.
Everything's awesome, but we need to reprioritize a bit to make sure we hit our targets.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now tell me more. So, this really long set of background, I think is a real challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, and I think thinking on your feet, like we were speaking about, it's great when you have
Mm.
the time and you can map it out, or you can sketch it out. What is
Mm,
my main message and what are my
mm.
supporting points? When you have to think on your feet, it can be a lot more challenging. So
Oh,
practicing
absolutely.
every week, like
Absolutely.
you were saying,
Mm.
almost at the end of each week or at the beginning of each week, you practice what are the things that I need to keep at the front of my mind, to keep at the front of the mind of the stakeholders and
Mhm.
shareholders and the people making the decisions.
Mm.
And then you get the ability to uplift, and think on your feet when
Yeah,
asked.
that's right. Well, you're not thinking on your feet as much, are you?
Well,
If
that's
you are on top of it, then there's less thinking on the feet to do. And I think preventing it
yeah,
is absolutely preventing as much of that as possible is the
yes.
thing to do, because otherwise it's all a bit of a, a bit of a
Mhm.
panic. And
Yes.
that's not helpful for you or for anybody really.
Yes. What I find sometimes challenging with clients of mine is knowing how much information to present to boards or to executive. And
Mm,
I know you do a lot of work with
mm,
boards and board papers, and especially when it comes to change business transformation programs. Everyone
mm.
sort of wants to know what's going on, but you need to keep it at the detail that they need to know. If you So not
Yes.
deep diving into the weeds,
Yeah.
but at the same time giving them
Yes.
enough, but not giving them too much to go into
Yes. Yeah.
the weeds. What is your advice when it comes to updates to really
Mm,
senior executives?
No, a great one. Well, the first one, I know I'm possibly being a little bit of a broken record, but it is the strategy. What
Yeah.
outcome do you need? And I think that narrows the focus so that you're actually really tight in what you need to say. So step one, narrow the zone by being really
Mhm,
clear about the outcome you need from that conversation. And it could just be trust, and that's fine. But
mhm.
just make sure you've got a very clear view of what you want to walk out with so that that will narrow the space. Um, and then I think a really good thing to do is check with your company secretary. Whatever
Mhm.
if it's a leadership team, go to the CEO's
Yes.
assistant. If it's the board, go to the company secretary. If it's a steering committee, and you're not familiar with them, then go to the person who organizes the meetings, who's in all the meetings, and say,
Yep.
okay, I think this is what I need to cover. Am I right? Are there any
Mhm.
hot topics that you can share
Yeah.
with me? I think this aspect of what we're doing or what I need to say could be a bit controversial.
Mm.
Help me.
Yeah.
Am I right on that? Who's it going to be controversial with? What are they going to say? What are they going to want to know?
Yes.
And, you know, get the inside intelligence and don't go to them and say, oh, I've got to update them on, the IT, their enterprise management project. What should I say? Or
Mm.
what do they know? Or, really general stuff like that. Think about it from your perspective first. What do you want to get from it? But then do
Mm.
that double check to really finesse it with those people. And they're so knowledgeable and really able to help. And it makes their life a whole lot easier, frankly, because particularly your company secretary is often charged with rewriting your
Right.
paper, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
that's an issue. But I would drop in one other thought, and that is to map your messaging on a page, a single page, and get that
Mm.
reviewed by the COSEC and by the CEO as a one pager before you draft your doc. Because if you give them a document, PowerPoint or Word, either one to review, you'll end up with a whole lot of minutiae comments,
Mm.
and it'll be really hard for them to do. They'll be slow to respond because they'll leave
Yes.
it to the last minute because it looks difficult. Go to
Yes.
them with a really clean one pager with big font, right?
I
Which will
love that.
force you
Yeah.
force you
Yeah.
to distill your messaging and get their feedback on that and then prepare the document.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. Um, yeah, I have a course on change management, which is called Change Plan on a Page. And the number of people that have said that change plan on a page has saved my project, has
Exactly.
saved my sanity. Having a clear messaging on one page is
Yeah.
so important. Yes, and
Isn't it?
it elevates everything to the right to the right clarity, and I love this because your program is called Clarity First, and this is all that it's all about. Having a
Yes.
really clear and concise and precise message with some
Mm.
supporting factors.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
we are coming to the top of our time, Dav, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been a pleasure having you on the chat. If people wanted to find you or wanted to follow you or do some of the excellent offers that you've got, where is the best place to find you?
So come to my website, clarityfirstprogram.com, and everything is there. But if you want sort of a quick taste to go a little bit further than what we've done now, have a
Mhm.
look for my free 10 Minutes to Better Emails course. So if you go to clarityfirstprogram.com and then put a /emails, you'll find
Mhm.
it. That's a really great place to start. I've got another program on Maven, which is more substantive if you're interested in something bigger, and it's called the Board Paper Bootcamp. And you can find that on my website as well, or clarityfirstprogram.com/BP for Board Paper Bootcamp.
Yeah, fantastic. And if people haven't connected with you on LinkedIn, I thoroughly recommend connecting or following Dav on LinkedIn. She shares daily tips and advice on how to make communications crisper, more clear, and to the point, and you will learn heaps from her. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I really appreciate the time and attention that you gave us, Dav, and that all of the people that joined us today. If you're watching this as a recording and would like to ask questions or have any follow-up comments, we would love to hear from you. Please drop them down below this. Thank you, and we'll see you again soon.
Take care. Thanks so much, Christina. Bye-bye.